wasn't making but $8 a week when I first started at Western Union. So I had to stay 2 weeks, and so I'd have $16 to start out life with. And that's how that worked out.
So were you 17 or 18, or how old were you?
I was 16.
So you're 16 and you started at Western Union, and
yeah.
It was your first real job, sounds like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did you meet Ed soon?
Well, no, like I say, when I started, he was working early nights, and I was on days, so I was off just as he was coming in for his trick, and so I didn't know him then at all. And later, when they put me on early nights, because, you know, I had been trained on these machines by that time, so I was an operator then, and I was working nights, because you didn't get day work. Of course, you weren't eligible for day work yet. And so I worked that for several days, and he was working early nights. So that's how I was more or less in contact with his hours. And one day when I was working at one of the machines, in the meantime, they were training your grandfather how to, I don't know what you called. We had these, when the messages were delivered in this basket, and the girl, which I used to do, was taking those messages and putting them on the positions where they were to be sent. There was also what do you call, a moving belt that was about this wide, and the operators would put the messages that they received at their positions where they were sending and receiving onto that belt, and then they would go around and slide across on this big thing, a basket type on wires, to the guy that was sorting them and sending them downstairs where they could be sent or given or called or whatever they did with them to the people that they belonged to, you know, the messages. And so I was sitting at one of the positions. Your grandfather worked at the end of one of those belts to keep the motors going right, and greased, I suppose, or whatever they did to keep things running, adjusting the mechanisms and all. And I was just across on the other side of this long bench that carried the sending apparatus and all, working. And he was close enough. He slipped a note across to me from where, you know, there was this division there, and so he tossed a note to me. He wanted to know what my name was. So I wrote Marguerite. I'll never forget what I wrote. But Margie to my friends. And I guess that's all it took. Well, that same day, when he got off work at 11, like I did, at the same time, only he was down, downstairs on the main floor of this tall building. And when I got off work, of course, I didn't know he was waiting for me at all. I saw him there, and I just probably acknowledged him with a nod or something, because my girlfriend, the one I lived with, was waiting. She'd gotten off from the telephone company at the same time. She was working early nights, and so she was going to meet me and walk home with me. And so she was there. So that disappointed him, of course, because his intentions was to take me home, because he had this Ford car. And so the next day, he wrote me a letter, and he said, well, fine thing, I was waiting to take you home, and you went home with somebody else. So I felt bad, because I had no idea that he was waiting for me. And so then the next night, he decided to try it again, and he was down there and waiting for me. Well, this time he took me home. And so it was about 1 o'clock when I really got into the house. Luckily, where I lived was a building that wasn't too far from where he lived, in a house with his folks. And it was probably about 3 blocks to his house, so it wasn't out of the way at all to take me home. But he told me all about his family and his life, and he questioned me about mine, and so forth. Why I was living alone with a friend instead of with my parents, and all this and that. So we got to know one another quite well. Well, from then on, of course, it was one date after another. So it worked out pretty nice.